Hey everyone, welcome to the Art Beauty Podcast, where we tell the real truth about the fake shit. My fabulous co-hosts for today are two gentlemen who have highly scientific backgrounds. I'm going to let them tell you all about it. But I found them because I was doing this New Beauty Live show, and there was this serum included. And for those who don't know, I love New Beauty because I find it's a very scientific and results-driven magazine. It's not just about what feels nice and looks nice. And so they had this serum called Heraux that was $250. And so I was definitely intrigued because, you know, you've got to have like the results have to match that price point. But when I started to look at the reviews, they really seem to. So before I get into it, let me introduce my two co-hosts for today. We've got Ben and Amir. Again, they are the creators of Heraux. Welcome.
Thank you, Amber, so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So let's start a little bit about, give me your background, because you two have very highly scientific and impressive backgrounds. Why don't we start with you, Ben?
Sure. I did my PhD at UCLA in stem cell biology, and my work has really focused on understanding how stem cells regulate their decision-making and how they decide whether or not to continue to regenerate and maintain our tissues in our bodies, or how they decide that maybe it's time to start closing up shop. And as you can imagine, that's how we age. Aging is essentially a function of stem cells. So that is how I got into science, and we'll talk a little bit more about how that morphed into skincare.
Amazing. And how about you, Amir?
Sure. So I got my medical degree at USC, where I also got my MBA. That's actually where I met Ben. My plan was to become an orthopedic surgeon, so I was looking for labs that were looking at arthritis and we met, we stayed in touch, kept discussing, and then he finally convinced me to, which was the best decision ever, to not go down the residency trail and to jump ship and join him and go down this road.
Okay, so you two met in the lab, but no, you weren't working on skincare to start, were you?
Yeah, that's exactly right. The focus that I've been working on for the last couple of years with my research has been osteoarthritis. And this is something that is both very personal to me because my mom has a lot of problems with her knees. But she's not the only one, right? There are tens of millions of people in the US and a lot more worldwide who suffer from this disease. And the really tough part about it is there are no therapies out there that actually, alter the course and trajectory of the disease. And I met another really great scientist at UCLA during my PhD, and he was interested in developing innovative therapies that actually do modify the course of the disease in arthritis. And that's really where the journey toward Heraux began is, strangely enough, looking at arthritis. And Amir, wanting to be an orthopedic surgeon, he joined us in trying to find new therapies. But then some fun twists and turns led to Heraux eventually.
So before we get to that, I mean, how does arthritis relate to aging of our skin, let's say?
Yeah, that I can imagine that's a pretty, it seems like quite the stretch. But strangely enough, it's not. So in the joint, in the knee, where most osteoarthritis is found, there's not a lot of regenerative potential in the cartilage. So the cartilage cells, once they get injured, there tends to be a lot of inflammation in the joint, and this promotes the aging process in the cartilage cells. And this relationship between inflammation and aging has recently been termed inflammaging. And this is like a burgeoning field of scientific research, understanding how, especially in stem cells, whether they be in the joint or in the skin, if you can modulate inflammatory processes and protect stem cells from these stimuli, we can actually coax them to be regenerative longer. And so with slowing down the aging process can be as long as you're doing it in the right way, reducing inflammation is a big part of that.
Right. Okay. I also want to take a minute and thank you. My mother has bad arthritis in the hands, and believe it or not, I'm staring across from 2 hand braces that I have wear because every now and again I have to deal with that. So hopefully there's going to be, something down the road to help that, or maybe I should just be rubbing this into my hands.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. But but what I would say is, there's a sister molecule of actually what's in Heraux that we're taking into clinical trials next year at USC for osteoarthritis.
Amazing.
So we're still quite actively involved in the research field and really trying to bring this, I would say, revolutionary technology to people and help them with all kinds of problems that they might have.
So I want to just take a second to pause here, right? Because we all have heard about stem cells, but can you give us sort of for the listeners who might not know exactly what they do, can you give me sort of a brief lay description of what they are and how they work in the body?
Yeah, Amber, that's an awesome question because I think you're exactly right. A lot of people, we hear the term stem cells, but most people aren't as nerdy as I am to spend, years and years of research really trying to understand it. So in the tissues in our body, let's say the skin, there is actually a hierarchy of cells with stem cells at the top, and then sort of budding down from that are other more differentiated cell types in the skin, just like, for example, normal keratinocytes that cover the surface of the skin. And
Right.
so under the surface of the skin, that's where the stem cells reside. And over time, they produce what we call daughter cells that then differentiate and form keratinocytes. So it's sort of this layering effect in the skin where the closer you get to the surface, the more differentiated the cells are. And then the stem cells, which are continually responsible for replacing them, are at the basal level of the skin. And the most important thing about stem cells in the skin is that the health of the skin is directly tied to the health of your stem cells.
So is that kind of, it's like the mama cell?
Yeah, that's exactly okay.
Okay,
I love it.
The mama bear. Got it.
That's the soundbite it's the mama bear of the different cell types in the skin. Exactly right.
Okay, so now let's so let's go into this product, because again, I know, you've made it very clear that this wasn't just sort of something that looks good, smells nice. This actually has results. So what is the key ingredient in Heraux?
Yeah, so that this is the story right here. How do you go from arthritis and looking for potential new therapies, to having a skincare product? And so, what we were doing in arthritis research was looking for new molecules that could help cartilage cells resist inflammation and regenerate a little bit more than they normally do.
Okay.
And so to do that, we actually screened almost 250,000 new we take this really seriously, and we screened almost 250,000 new molecules. And before I go on, I just want to talk about specifically what kind of molecules these are, because people hear molecules, and I don't know that we've often had times, just like stem cells, to understand what that means.
Yeah.
So in skincare, a lot of things we see commonly are peptides, for example. So peptides are chains of amino acids, and they're pretty big, actually. So they typically they are not able to penetrate the skin because of their size. The molecules we were working with in our screening process, they're called biomimetic lipids. So biomimetic means they mimic things that are present already in our body. They're just subtle variations of what's naturally occurring. And then lipid is another kind of molecule similar to a peptide but with slightly different properties. Lipids can penetrate cell membranes if they are small enough. And that's one of the key properties of eventually what we call HX1 in the Heraux serum. It's very small, really only about 20 times as big as water. Whereas peptides would be 1,000 times bigger than water. So just for some idea of scale in a very obscure world. So we were screening almost 250,000 biomimetic lipids for these sort of pro-regenerative, anti-inflammatory properties on cartilage cells. And we came up with about 473 candidates that looked really promising. And so, as scientists are wont to do, we refined these candidates further and got down to fewer than 100, and then 3, and then 1. And this molecule, this new biomimetic lipid, was very exciting. But because of who we are, we weren't done there yet. We actually made almost 70 new variants of that biomimetic lipid, moving individual atoms around in it. Go ahead.
Wow, I was just going to say, like, are we adding ingredients? Are we doing so? This is at the atomic level.
This is at the atomic level, so different.
Okay.
I know it sounds esoteric, but it's really how the process works.
Sure. And like, how long does something like this take?
Yeah, this entire process took almost 3 years to really go through the initial 250,000 and then refinement and then further refinement, which actually means you make new variations, from a starting point that is good, but you want to make it better.
And so now Amir, were you involved in this part of the process of it as well?
Yeah, so I was, still in school during this process. So I was still kind of bouncing back between my clinical work and then checking in on the lab. I'm not gonna lie, my forte does not lie in bench work. So I'm definitely more on the clinical side, but I was able to, thanks to Ben's help and the lab's help, to follow along, help where I could. But then really where my focus will come into more play is more on the clinical side and actually getting it from what we were theorizing it could do to what it could actually do on the skin. So I'll jump in shortly.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So, Ben, how heartbreaking was this process? Like, how many times were you like, are you kidding me?
Oh, Amber. I mean, I think, I learned really fast in graduate school, when you're working these 100-hour weeks, that disappointment and failure are essentially the norm. And, you really, if you're going to be successful, you have to understand that each one of those failures is just an opportunity to try again, to learn, and to get better. But yeah, you fail at least 95% of the time. So it can be really frustrating. But if I think all successful scientists learn how to channel that failure and sort of rework your mindset to understand that you're learning something, even if it's incremental at each step in the way.
Okay, so we are in the lab. You are literally moving atoms around, trying numerous different formulas. Where was that aha moment? What did you see?
Yeah. So, after we had tested all of the 70 final variations and had one molecule and started working with it, it became immediately clear that this was superior to everything we had tried before. We were presenting the data. So this is going to sound even nerdier than anything I've already said.
Hey, talk nerdy to me. We like that here. All right.
Okay, great. Because that's all I really know how to do.
That's great.
I appreciate the forbearance. So we were having, we actually get together on a weekly basis, all the weirdo scientists on the research floor. We get together and somebody talks about their projects and how things are progressing so that we can get input from the other folks. Is sort of a collegial discussion and try to move things forward. And we were presenting the work with the new molecule at one of those meetings, and a researcher down the hall said, looking at how that molecule is working and what it can do in terms of allowing for regeneration and sort of preventing inflammatory signaling, you should test it on the skin. it could be something really important in terms of protecting stem cell health in the skin and promoting positive effects.
Because at this point you were testing it on what?
For arthritis. So we were working with cartilage cells and we were getting phenomenal results.
Can I ask you, was it like human samples,
yes,
animal samples?
Human samples in a dish. Yep.
Okay. Gotcha.
So that's really how this process starts. That's how because that's the only way to characterize something when you're looking at so many different options. You want to be able to do something that you can do in a relatively high throughput way. And so cells in a dish is a great way to do that.
Okay. So somebody who I hope you have sent cookies and Christmas cards to was like, hey guys, you should try this in skincare.
Yeah. He said, you really should think about this on the skin. He was not actually suggesting skincare, just in general, skin health and regeneration. And skin wounding is really what he focuses on. And so, yes, absolutely. He's actually a member of our scientific advisory board. We definitely greatly appreciate everything that he's done. And I think all the folks that have tried Heraux probably do too. But we were reluctant, I have to admit. This is really where Amir and his persistence come in to play strongly, because we were arthritis researchers, and it's difficult to get outside of your comfort zone and try and break into new fields of research. But Amir, he has a background in working with consumer goods, and also he's just frankly more stylish and in touch with the real world than the rest of us, scientists. Not that he's not a scientist. Well, he's not, but it's okay. But he really was pushing for exploring the capacity of the molecule that became known as HX1 in skincare. Just kept pushing, and we're really glad he did.
All right. So what is it that this HX1 now does for our skin?
Yes, that's the $250 question, isn't it?
Sure is.
And what I'm really happy to be able to talk about is, unlike I would say most things in skincare, we know exactly what HX1 does. We know the protein on the cell surface that the little biomimetic lipid docks with, and how it changes the structure of that protein and modulates how it signals inside the cell. I think that's such a distinct advantage, because not only does that allow us room for innovation in the future, but it also really helps us to understand how HX1 might be applicable for different skin types or different potential conditions that are happening on the skin. So to break it down, there is, and this is going to sound so Lord of the Rings, there is one protein to rule them all when it comes to regulating cell biology in the skin. And this protein controls the balance between regeneration on one end of the spectrum and inflammation and aging on the other end of the spectrum. And based on how it is activated, you can get maybe a little bit of both, maybe a little bit of pro-regenerative signaling coupled with a little bit of pro-inflammatory signaling, or, and this is where HX1 comes in, it actually swings the balance almost exclusively to allowing for pro-regenerative signaling. And it blocks out the pro-inflammatory signaling that this protein would normally be presenting inside the cell.
I mean, I am so in love with this. I think a lot of the times we forget how much R&D research goes into these products, but this one, I mean, really is working, again, not just to sort of exfoliate the skin. This is actually changing our cells and how they behave at the cellular level.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and allowing them, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just get so excited.
No, go ahead. That's what we do here.
It allows your stem cells to essentially function in their sort of youthful homeostatic state, meaning, what we talked about earlier, right? This link between inflammation and aging, or inflammaging. What HX1 does is it competes out that process almost entirely. And so, especially for younger folks, it can be a preventative. You can put it on and the cells just keep doing what they're supposed to be doing longer. And actually, as Amir will talk about in terms of the results from the clinical trial we ran with HX1, even for people that have had some skin damage, it's actually capable of repairing skin damage.
Ooh,
yeah,
all right.
yeah. So I'm gonna shut up finally, and let's get Amir in here and start talking about effects on the skin.
Okay, right. And just to recap now, we know, again, highly scientific formula that is changing how our cells behave at a cellular level. Let's talk results. Okay, so Amir, this is where you come into. What were some of the results that you were seeing in the clinical trials? And by the way, I love how excited you are right now, Ben. It's good.
I can't help myself. It's who I am. The people around me have learned to deal with it, or they don't talk to me.
We're a small team, as you can see. So, we had the theories about how HX1 we thought it was going to work on the skin level. But before we dove in and actually created Heraux and the formulation around it, we wanted to make sure that actually was going to happen in real life. And so what we did is we took just HX1, we put it in an inert base, so no other actives. And we ran a clinical trial, like a cosmetic clinical trial. So we used a third-party research center to do it. We had 30 participants over the course of 8 weeks that used that application of HX1 twice a day, so morning and night. And what we saw, we had grading done by an independent dermatologist at week 0, week 4, and week 8. And then we had 2 different sets of imaging. We had the high-def images that people are used to seeing, which are called Visia images. And then we also did something called Antera. Antera is cool because it can basically put a numerical value to a certain wrinkle, and it can track that wrinkle over that 8-week period. So we looked at the same wrinkle week 0, week 4, and week 8. And so what we saw results-wise was that 100% of the participants had at least one benefit. And the categories we looked at were, so I should throw that in there, were fine lines, wrinkles, hyperpigmentation, radiance or the brightness of the skin, laxity, and finally smoothness or texture. So we looked across those 6 categories. And what we saw was that all participants showed at least one benefit in the categories. They were all statistically significant benefits. And then when we looked at certain things like with wrinkles, we showed up to an 85% decrease in wrinkle depth at week 8.
Wow.
Which was really exciting. And then what was even better for us, though, we noticed was that results continue to improve from week 4 to week 8. So with prolonged use, you continue to see better results.
So what is it, though, that helps the wrinkle be less deep?
Yeah, so it's the way HX1 works, like Ben was saying. So, our stem cells in the deeper layer of the skin, or the dermal layer of the skin, they're typically putting down the necessary proteins like collagen, elastin, and other matrix to basically prevent to kind of minimize that. When we're young, it does a really good job of minimizing wrinkles from damage, et cetera. But as we get older, the damage from inflammation, it affects our stem cells' ability to put down those proteins. And so those wrinkles aren't filled in as well anymore. So you start to see the deeper wrinkles, the fine lines, hyperpigmentation, the signs of aging start to kick in because our stem cells aren't able to do their thing like they used to. So what HX1 does is, on one axis, it basically is able to reduce the inflammaging response so that your stem cells are living in a happier environment, so they can go ahead and put down the proteins that are needed. And then we give it a little boost too. So it does a little hypercharge, which is why you see the reduction in the fine lines and wrinkles.
How does that differ from something like a hyaluronic acid, right? Which is involved in retaining water and plumping.
Yeah. So exactly. That does exactly what you said. It retains water, it plumps. And it's more of so I'll qualify this. We actually have hyaluronic acid in our formulation, in the final formulation of the product. But it serves a very specific role in terms of moisturizing and keeping sort of the plumpness of the skin. But what HX1 is doing, this is why, we see great results at week 4, but even better at week 8, is that it's actually depositing proteins, helping to deposit proteins in the dermal layer of the skin. So it's not just about holding water, and then once you stop, applying the product, the water just kind of dissipates out and you're kind of left back where you started. With HX1 and then this final formulation, you're going to get continued improvement with your prolonged use. And so that's why compliance is so important for everything. Yeah.
All right. So we talked about the wrinkles, but what about the rest of the skin? How is it dealing with like things like radiance, sun damage?
That was one of the better results we saw too. Wrinkles obviously is the most exciting, but the radiance made a ton of sense as well, because you have a layer of stem cells in the epidermal layer of the skin too, right? And so what you see when you get a facial or something like that, it's like you're swapping off those dead cells. But what this does is it actually kickstarts stem cells in the epidermal layer, and it allows, it pushes up the skin layer. So it's kind of like a natural sort of exfoliant. So you get really brighter skin. And then also we saw some improvements with hyperpigmentation, reducing some of those brown spots on people's skin as well.
Okay. So now you mentioned 6 categories, but laxity being one of them?
Yes.
Because that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, we were,
laxity is a tough thing. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. That was one that we were, we wanted to throw in there because, again, we wanted to see if really HX1 was going to be able to do what we theorized it could do. And then when we saw that improvement, we were very excited. I mean, it made sense. The good thing about it, like Ben mentioned, is that because we know, not only do we know where this HX1 binds on the point, but we know what's coming downstream of that interaction. So we could predict these things to happen. And when we actually saw them, on people's face, and you see the improvement in the images and you see the data coming out of it was really exciting.
So now how many years ago was this?
The trial itself was only about a year ago.
Okay. All right. So this is really new,
really
hot
recent
technology.
Yeah.
And so it seems like how has the reaction been so far?
It's been fantastic. We, to be very transparent, Ben and I don't know anything about skincare. Yes, I had some experience, from the entrepreneurial side of me in consumer goods and working there, but I hadn't been in skincare. And so, we've worked with a great team to getting the product out there to people's hands. And as more people have used it, the feedback's been fantastic. And, outside of just the anti-aging benefits, a couple of other things that have been really exciting for us have been people that suffer from, rosacea or really badly irritated skin, and also acne. And, these are both inflammatory skin conditions, right? And we don't make any of these claims because we haven't actually tested for it. So we want to stay true to our ethos as scientists and doctors, that we're not going to say anything that we haven't tested. But we do get consistent feedback for people that, for example, with rosacea, that, the redness of their skin decreases or the irritation will decrease. And then those with acne, the frequency of the breakouts will decrease, or the actual, duration will be less. And so those are always fantastic to hear, because, a lot of people that are suffering from those skin conditions are really, suffering from them. And, again, it makes sense scientifically because they're inflammatory, and that's the way HX1 works, in stopping that process and even helping to reverse it a little bit. But overall, the feedback's been really great.
Okay, so you only have one hero product here with Heraux.
We don't skew too far from the Heraux here.
So what is the way to use this?
Sure. So
you mentioned twice a day, but because a lot of us have, routines. So what step do we use this, and how should we use it?
Yeah. So, when we were working with our formulator to kind of create the final product, which is HX1, but also has things like hyaluronic acid, peptides, vitamin C, vitamin E, and even red maple bark extract. We wanted to make sure that it was quickly absorbing, because our formulator told us, like, hey, people have other products, so you're going to have to make sure it fits in to their routines. You can't expect everyone just to toss their medicine cabinet because you two showed up. So, we designed it to be quickly absorbing to fit in. So in the evening routine, we say, after you've cleaned your face, toner, then we say use any pure oils. So if you have a serum that's like a pure oil serum, and then use Heraux on top of that. And that just helps with absorption, like Ben was saying, those pure oils are lipids, so they like to get, they can help get deeper in the skin, and they actually work well together, Heraux and the pure oils, and getting, into the deeper layers of the skin. And then you pack on like a heavy moisturizer or anything like that. And in the mornings, we say, again, wash your face, and then you can use Heraux. We do get some good feedback about it being a great primer. So for people that are using, sunscreens, especially the mineral sunscreen or makeup,
it has a very smooth. And just to show people, let me see. I'm just going to open this up. This is not. It's a pump. I'm just going to show this because it's better than. It's got like a very, sort of smooth texture and a very pleasant Very light smell. So people, it's not
Very
heavily
light
fragrance.
smell,
Thank you for that. And it really does go on nicely to the skin. How about for people who use like retinols? Is this something?
Yeah, it's a great question.
When we start, yeah.
So, we always say if you're using like a prescription strength retinoid, definitely do a little spot test. They should play well together. You usually will put the retinoid or retinol first on your skin, then you'd apply Hero after. Again, everyone's skin sensitivity is going to be a little bit different, especially the stronger retinols. We'd say do a little spot test first. Make sure you're not going to have that irritation. No matter what, wear sunscreen the next day.
Always.
Every day. Using retin-A.
Every day.
No matter what you should, but especially using retin-A.
I don't know if anybody can see this. You know what else I really liked about that? A lot of serums, I don't want to say they can have a greasy feeling sometimes, but this almost has a really nice matte feel to it.
Right.
It's really, really, is there any silicone in this?
There is. There's a little silicone in there too. Yeah.
So great. So a great makeup primer.
Yeah,
well
exactly.
Done.
So it serves well on that purpose too. For people who makeup, like you said, and then you can apply like the mineral sunscreen, so it prevents the clumping and those sorts of things with this texture. All
right. So, is there anything, given that, again, highly scientific, affecting the cells at the cellular level, is there anything that we should not be using this with?
I'll take a stab at this first and I'll let Ben dive in too. The only thing I would say is we have a good amount of vitamin C in there in terms of the final formulation. And so certain people that are using like heavily concentrated vitamin C serums on top and then adding ours on top could be a little much on the skin. In terms of the formulation, it's still going to be pretty stable. But that's the only thing we usually recommend against. Like I prefer people to use the retinoids more than like a heavy vitamin C and us on top.
And when did you say you applied, after or before the retinoid?
After. You want to put the retinoids typically directly on your skin. Because again, they're especially the prescription strength is the reason you're using it. So let that get in there.
Yeah. Totally. But also, I mean, this is meant to be kind of a standalone, right? We don't necessarily need to layer on.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why, again, so the final formulation, like I said, HX1 is our hero ingredient. And so the genesis of the name, or the origins of the name, I should say, with our formulator, she kept calling our molecule the hero molecule. And I think it was Ben who had the insight. It was like, well, that actually sounds like a great name. Let's make it look pretty. And that's the brand name. So
it's great. It's great.
Yeah, I think it's worked out well.
In terms of Inflammaging, who are the good candidates for this, right? We all know if we start younger, as you mentioned, this is going to really keep your skin supercharged and active, working at that more regenerative, the more regenerative properties. But what about for an older consumer?
Yeah, so the thing that was great from our trial that we saw the participants, the participants who skewed older actually had the best results, and which was kind of against what we were thinking, because you would think as you get older, your cells are going to be more tired and just not able to function at such a great level. But what we realized is that when you can reduce, because if you step back, right, well, wait,
before that, what was older? What was older?
So over 45. We had participants all the way, into their 50s and 60s, showing the best results. I think a few of them that had the 85% reduction in wrinkle depth were over 55 in terms of age. Yeah. So it was really exciting. But kind of going back, our skin is in a unique spot because it's getting attacked both from external factors, so UV light, pollution, and then internally too, our diet, and this here, our emotional stress, psychological stress, drinking. But it's coming from both ends. And what's interesting is that the inflammatory process that these trigger, it's all coming down one real main pathway. There's other processes, but for the most part, 90+% of it is coming down one pathway. And HX1 works on that specific pathway. And so what happens is by limiting that, you're allowing those stem cells to be able to work in a better, have a happier environment. You're reducing the inflammatory components around them. And then when you give them a little kick, they're able to do their job in a really great fashion. And so, even for people that are a little bit older, over 45, over 55, we still see really great results.
Cool. Okay. And now just in terms of using this, you mentioned 4 weeks you started to, but really 8 weeks. If somebody was to use this, give it an 8 weeks. Don't just try it one night and be like, I didn't see something the next morning.
100% right. Which is also why we added the other ingredients in there, because they work in a much quicker fashion. They work, on the external layer of the skin, like peptides, they get you results and it's a compliance thing, right? You see it in the clinics all the time. You got to make sure people follow your prescription or what you tell them to do, and you got to give them some results ahead of time. So the other ingredients, not only do they play well with HX1, but they also help to show results for the consumer in a much quicker fashion, and that allows HX1 to do its thing over that 4 to 8 week period. So at the end of 8 weeks, you're just glowing.
Amazing. So what's next now for you guys?
We're going to continue to expand the line. We're working on a next SKU, really trying to hone in on what, what would be really complementary to what this current serum is. So we're going to probably add upon that and just continue to expand it, getting more people to use the product, being able to talk to more people like yourself to kind of get the story out there, as long as you'll continue to have us. I know we can both be a lot, but
we love it. No, it's great. And you know what? I think it's really good for people to understand how much science goes into this. And also why something would cost $250. There is some, 3 years of blood or 4 years of blood, sweat, and tears involved in this. Is it good for anything else? Off the record, not making any clinical claims, but things like if you've got scarring or like stretch marks, or have you seen any good? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we hear stories a lot about, and again, off the record here, but
off the record, right? Not making clinical claims, but
we the best things we've actually seen are people who've actually had burns while cooking and such, and they've applied it right after, and that's when your skin is really open. But if you think about it, when you have that kind of damage, the ability to penetrate is much higher, and so it gets in there, and you can see the healing time. And we even have people just doing for fun after they burn themselves for fun, but they'll do half and half, and the healing time is just it's dramatically improved when you start applying the Heraux to it. And even with stretch marks and such, we had a few people who had just had babies, and after their pregnancy, they applied it on their stomach, and they sent us pictures the before and after, and pretty amazing results. Just like the ability and it makes sense because it's just when your skin is damaged like that, it's the ability for HX1 to penetrate it's so much easier. The skin is more vulnerable. Its ability to get in there is faster, and it just is able to work the way we theorize. I don't know
it's opening its arms to the mama cell. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I want to just thank you so much. It really shows that you guys have put so much care into this. Have discovered this happy accident, and just like I said, reading the reviews, and verified reviews, people seem over the moon about this. So, thank you for all of your hard work. We can't wait to see what's next. And if people want to learn more about this, where's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, right now, mainly our website, heroeskin.com. And, there we have the before and afters as well. We have the links to some of the different press outlets, and the reviews from verified purchasers are there as well. So that's the best place. And then you can always, there's a chat bot in there. It's not really a bot, it's just Ben and I handling it. So any time of night, we'll respond to any questions.
That's awesome. I love you direct. And are you looking to do this in retail, or right now it's just going to be only online?
Yeah, it's a great question. The retail landscape in the last year has changed dramatically, but at the end of the day, we still want to get in there. So we're working on it. I think we have a couple of partners we're excited to announce before the end of the year, which is great for us. And then, but for the most part, on our website, a few online retailers, and hopefully continue to expand. And once, things sort of open up again, for lack of a better word, hopefully we'll be inside some of those retailers as well.
I just wanted to note really quickly. So we've been saying Heraux a lot, but I don't know. I just wanted to spell it just because it's a little bit of an, if that's a good idea. So Amir mentioned the website Heraux. It's HERAUX skin. Thank you, Amber. That's perfect. Heroeskin.com. Just because we chose to get a little fanciful with the spelling of the word hero. That's all.
Yes. It's very cute. And be a hero. Oh, I'm actually looking at the back of the box. So not tested on animals?
Not tested on animals, cruelty-free, vegan, gluten-free, no parabens, sulfates, phthalates. We did it as clean as we possibly could.
I mean, guys, well done. Thank you so, so much. Really such a pleasure. And I cannot wait to see what comes from you. And, thanks for the years of science and research. And, bravo. is all I can say. You are my hero.
I'm glad you like it.
Well, thank you, everyone. Of course, if you've got any questions you want me to pass on to Ben and Amir, although it sounds like you can just go and chat and they are very responsive, you can always reach out to us. Hello at Art Beauty Podcast. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Art Beauty Podcast. And as always, we will see you next Tuesday. Bye.